Welcome back, Embers, or if you're new here, welcome to Campfire Crew. My name is Stone. My pronouns are they, them. This is my makeup look today. And as you can tell by the title of today's video, we are doing my intro update 1 and update 2. Yes, it's a big one for No Pan Left Behind times 2. So for intro things, No Pan Left Behind, if you haven't heard about it before, is a project where essentially you're trying to reach for every single pan of eyeshadow in your entire collection. Some people do this by just rolling in the whole collection at one time and tracking their usage, and other people, usually with larger collections, will do this by picking random palettes and then trying to No Pan Left Behind specific palettes and then rolling in new palettes. For me, I have a decently small still collection of palettes, and so I'm doing the first method. Everything's rolled in, and I'm just going to be giving you updates on what I have used so far. Up on the screen, I'm going to put how many pans. Wait, I was going to say pans of eyeshadow I have, but I have that written down. Where is it written down? I think in my next. No. There it is. I have 121 individual pans of eyeshadow right now. However, I have a new palette shipping to me at the moment from my friend, my lovely friend Persephone, for my birthday. Thank you, Persephone, who will hopefully be doing videos soon. But they also have an Instagram, so I will link that down below. So this isn't how many eyeshadows I need to use each month going forward, but right now I need to use this many eyeshadows. Oh, and the times 2 is because I'm trying to do this No Pan Left Behind twice over. So every pan of eyeshadow, normally in a No Pan Left Behind, you use it once. This time I'm trying to use it 2 times. And if I complete that goal by the end of the year, I will do this again next year, but I'll do a No Pan Left Behind times 3, and so on and so forth. Great. So we are going for January and February's update. I'm going to be going palette by palette, and I'm just going to tell you what shades I've used in January, what shades I've used in February by each palette. I'm not going to go through all the palettes twice, so you'll see what I have. And then I'll tell you at the end how many total uses I have. So the total uses I need is going to be, I have 121 eyeshadows in my palettes in my collection right now, which means I'm gonna have to use, before the new palette gets here, 242 separate eyeshadows. So at the end, I'll count up how many out of those 242 eyeshadows I have used. So we're going back to front, which is oldest or newest palette to oldest, just because I did it the other way when I was piling up my things. I don't know if you can see the eyeshadow pile behind me. I don't know if that's in frame, but I have my whole stack beside me. There's only one palette I didn't use this month, and it's a palette I'm considering decluttering. It has a silver in it that I really like, but as soon as I get a palette, I've been looking for a gray tone palette with a silver shimmer, preferably a white, a light gray, a dark gray, and a nice silver, and then maybe a couple more shades, but that's all I really need. As soon as I get something to replace the quad I have with the silver in it, I'm going to get rid of it, so I'm not too worried about that, but I should definitely use it sometime. Anyway, let's get into it. So my first palette that we're going to talk about is Harvest of Souls. This is what the palette looks like. And so far in January and February, I have finished Patience. I have used one shade in January. I've used Patience once in January and twice in February, meeting my 2 uses for the year. So this shade is done. And then we have the shade Eternal, which I have used once in January. So we're halfway there with this shade. Then we have the shade Ancient, this dark purple, which I used once in February. And that's all I've done so far. I'm missing a tally mark on this palette, I'm realizing now. Anyway, I will deal with that later, but I missed one of my January palettes. So that means for this palette, I have finished one shade and started working on a couple more shades, which is good, but it's not great. I do love this palette and I think it's really beautiful. And I finally hit 10 uses on this palette. So, you know, last year, if you were here for that, if you're here screaming, it's my neighbor's child. Last year I was trying to do my project 10 uses. I got that palette in like November, I think. I got 9 uses last year, so now I'm at 10. I'm actually at 11 because again, I missed a mark. But that's neither here nor there. Then, next palette we're going to talk about is my Simply Posh Citrus Punch palette. And so first of all, I see how I did this. Okay. Every time the new year happens, I'm like, how did I arrange these shade colors? This year I did the columns instead of across, which I think will be easier for me to understand once I get used to it. So first of all, I used citrus in February one time, so we're halfway done with that. And then I used lemon one time in January. I used the shade Tasty twice in February, so we're done with this shade, which is awesome. That's the first shade we're done with in this palette. Then I used the shade Tangerine 2 times in January, so we're done with this shade as of January. It's like a yellow with a pink shift, but it's kind of orangey too, depending on like how yellow you think something needs to be yellow versus orange. But it's this yellowy orange. It's really pretty. So I'm glad I've already got my 2 uses on it. Then I used the shade Tropical, which I didn't use as much last year, I don't think. Oh no, I used this a lot. Never mind. I used the shade Tropical one time in February because it's this like orange with a pink shift. Really pretty. Love orange. I'm sure you guys know that I love oranges. So I used this once in February. And then last I used Flavorful, this shimmer, once in February. Flavorful? Oh, no, not last. I also used Blood Orange once in January. Flavorful and Blood Orange are shades that I didn't use that much last year. I used them 3 times each. Grapefruit also only got 2 uses, but we'll ignore that one for now. But I've learned to really love both of these shades. Flavorful is definitely a much prettier shimmer than it looks in the pan. At least I find. Like, when I look at it, I'm just like more enticed to use Tropical because it's orangey and tangerine, and tangy and sour. Like, they pull me in more, but on the eyes, this is so beautiful, and I definitely am very excited to get my second use on it, and then hopefully also many more uses. So then, as you could probably see, we also have the Menagerie Indigo Ink palette, which is the next palette we're going to talk about. And I love when they fold over like this. And this is what it looks like. So I didn't use too many of these shades, but we're going to start with the shade, I haven't used any of these, but I did use the shade Small Spaces once in January and once in February. So Small Spaces is done. That does not surprise me because I love this blue, and it goes really well with the blues in my Harvest of Souls palette, which of course I bought it recently, so I've been using a ton, and it's, you know, January. I love blues in January. So this is done. Not surprised at that, about that at all. I used Giant Pacific, this dark blue, once in January. Also, you know, a perfect January blue color. I used Tide Pool, this brighter blue. These two, I feel like people have said they look similar, but they really aren't. This one's very dusty and this one's very like punchy, especially on the eye. This one like is really standout, whereas this one's just like beautiful, light pastel, dusty of a shade. So I do actually like having both of these in here, just for the record, not that you can get this palette anymore. But Tide Pool I used once in January and once in February. So Tide Pool and Small Spaces are both done. Both of the blues in this palette, not that, or two of the blue masks in this palette, not that surprising. I use them a lot with other palettes. I just think they're really pretty blues to blend other shades out. Then we have Ink Blot I used once in January, and I also used, words are hard, Inky Torpedo once in January, which I also like these two colors. I have a shade like this in a different palette, which we'll get to at the very end, the very first palette I own, so it's at the very end of this video, but I like the quality of this a lot better. Next, we have my Sephora Wishing You palette. This one, I can just take the mirror off. It's still pretty shiny though. And I used, these don't have names on them as far as I can tell. Oh, this is not right, okay. But I used, this is called Red Shimmer, and I used it once in January. Then I used Dark Red Shimmer once in January and 2 times in February, meaning I have 3 uses, but 2 of them count. That is done. These are both really pretty shades for February. This one's like very dark and grungy, which I like, especially for like a dark grungy. It's very good for the winter, for the fall, for November. I think I'm going to use this palette a lot as well. And then I used the last shade in this palette. Nope, that is it for this palette. So this one's done, this one's half done, and I haven't touched anything else for January and February. Then I have my Complex Cultures quad, which I haven't used at all. And after that, we have this little, now is a trio of shades that I just want to use up because I actually really like these shades. And I used this only in February, but I used this shade right here, Swiss Cheese, once in February. And I used this shade, Monterey Jack, also in February, but in 2 separate looks. So I'm half done on both of these, just 1 more use on each of these, and 1 use or 2 uses on, wait, no, I lied. 1 use on Swiss Cheese, 1 use on Monterey Jack is the yellow. So I haven't used the shade Mozzarella. I think now that it's getting springtime, this is going to be pulled out. I like it as a blush a lot. I think it's really pretty. A blending out shade as well. But I used these 2 once each. So we have that. I'm going to make another pile. Then the palette I was holding up is, if I switch it over here, the Rock and Roll Beauty by Def Leppard palette. So I used the shade Cry 1 time in February. Then I used the shade Hallucinate twice in January, once in February. So in January, I finished this off. I love the shade for an inner corner, especially. It's a really beautiful shade, so I'm glad I have used that, and I'm not surprised I used it super early. Then I used this shade Paper Sun once in January, and that is all I used so far. Honestly, when I look at this palette, there's a lot of shades that I don't know what the future of this palette is, to be honest. If there's other shades I might take out of here. But I know I love Hallucinate and Immortal and Cry are really beautiful. And the rest of them, I don't know. But for now, we have all the shades, and that's what I have used. Ooh, this isn't the last palette. So this is my Divina Singles. This is my actual oldest palette. We also have 2 shades from the Cheese palette that I just showed you that I took out when I was going to repress all of the shades from that palette, and then I repressed a matte into this palette. It didn't turn out very well, and I went, you know what, maybe I'm not very good at this, so I'm just going to stop and not destroy those 2 shades that I quite like. So these 2 I haven't used, but I used the shade Blazed 1 time in February. I used the shade Majesty one time in January, and then I used the shade Nemesis one time in January and a few more times in February, but this one is done. Also, if you notice that it has a little pan, no, you don't. Spoiler, sorry about that. But you know, pan those eyeshadows. It's going to be a good update. Anyway, then we have my freaking huge palette, my 40 pan palette. This is my second ever palette, my Carnival 3, and it gets a lot of use because it has pretty much every color I could possibly need in it. So this one's, I'm going to put it a little closer to me because there's a lot of shades to look at. So the first shade I used in this palette is Tahiti Green, and I used that one time in February. Then I used the shade Clay one time in February. I used the shade Sand one time in January and one time in February. So Sand is our first shade rolling out of this project, which is exciting. I definitely need that. I used the shade Yellow one time in January. I used the shade Bear one time in February, which makes sense because it's a pink. I used the shade Mango one time in January, twice in February. So in February we rolled it out, which is very exciting. And I'm not surprised, I love oranges. Then I used the shade Blaze. We have Blazed in the other palette and Blaze in this one. Not confusing at all. But I used that once in February. Doesn't surprise me. Reds, pinks, purples, love them. I used the shade Lilac twice in January, so we rolled that out in January. Tahiti I used once in January, so that's halfway there. The shade Starlight I used twice in January, so that has rolled out. And that is absolutely everything that I use. So give me a second to do some math for y'all. So I have used 45 of the shades that I need. So 45 out of 242, again, as of this moment, which isn't great. I'm pretty sure I calculated this earlier. I'll put it up on the screen how many shades I need to use each month. So in January, I would have needed to use this many shades. In February, I would have needed to use this many shades. And then combined, I would have needed to use this many shades. I'm pretty sure I'm behind, but I also calculated this based on how many I'm gonna need to use once I get my new palette in. So I'm not sure if I'm behind when we're not including the new palette, but I know I'm behind if we would include the new palette. But I don't think I'm that far behind, but definitely March, I wanna get some good use on it. And we're very early on into March. Hopefully I post this soon. And so far I'm doing pretty good. So I'm not too fussed about that. I think I'm just gonna keep this up. I'm definitely gonna try and go for greens this month. I love doing greens in March, doing pinks in February, doing blues in January. Then I kind of just do whatever I want. But I am very seasonal about my makeup, so you'll probably notice that. But of course, sometimes I just want to do a fun look. But I think we're doing pretty okay with this project, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good day. Bye, guys.